ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, this is my co-host Teddy, and today we're doing an 8-core AMD CPU showdown. It's going to be the Ryzen 7 1700 going up against the Threadripper 1900x. So the cheapest Ryzen 8-core against the most expensive, basically. So this one will be really interesting, and let's first start with the CPUs themselves and give you a rundown of what they're all about. So the Ryzen 7 1700, obviously 8 cores, 16 threads, coming in with a 3 GHz base clock and a 3.7 GHz turbo clock, although with XFR I was seeing it go up to about 3.75 GHz. And then you have the Threadripper 1900X. So once again, 8 cores, 16 threads, but much higher base clock speed. You're seeing there 3.8 GHz at its base with a turbo of 4 GHz, but with XFR, I was seeing it go all the way up to 4.2 GHz. So that is very impressive there. Now there's a big difference in TDP. 65 watt TDP for the 1700 compared to the massive 180 watt TDP of the 1900X. But the cache is the same. They both have 4 megabytes of L2 cache and 16 on the L3 cache. So let's move over now and talk about the test rigs then, because obviously these are on 2 different platforms. So the Ryzen 7 1700, that was tested with a Gigabyte AX370 Gaming K3 motherboard, which I found to be, it's okay, I suppose. And the 1900X, that was tested with my personal motherboard, the MSI X399 Gaming Pro Carbon, which has been getting better and better with every new BIOS update. So it's a lot better now than how it was before. So memory-wise, it's difficult because the Threadripper can run a quad-channel memory, and that's really the big difference between these two CPUs. Is the fact that the 1900X is on the X399 platform. It can run different types of memory. I'm not going to get into it too much in this video, but we'll just say that it runs quad channel. It runs it a bit differently, and the 1700 can only run dual channel memory. But with that in mind, I ran them at the same speed, 2933 megahertz for all the tests. GPU was the same, the MSI GTX 1080 Ti Gaming X. That is my new personal GPU, and I found it to be absolutely fantastic so far. It's been really good. And as far as the coolers go, I use the stock cooler for the 1700 because you can get away with it and it comes with it, whereas I use my H115i liquid cooler for the 1900X. I'll bring this into the equation more later on when we talk about price and things like that. But that is a big difference there. Obviously, you can get away with much cheaper coolers or the stock cooler with the 1700, whereas that is not the case with the 1900X. And with that in mind, let's talk about the overclocking and temperatures, because this was really interesting. So the Ryzen 7 1700, this 1700 is the one I've been using for a while now, and it overclocks about the same as pretty much all the other Ryzen CPUs. It went up to 4 GHz, which is still fine on all 8 cores. Very solid there. The 1900X I got was absolutely crazy though. This thing went up to 4.3 GHz on all 8 cores. And it was perfectly happy there. I rendered, the first time I did this, I ran Cinebench with that 4.3 thinking there's no way to do it. And it did it. And I took a screenshot and immediately sent it to Steve over at Hardware Unboxed. And I was like, bro, look at this. Because so far I've had so much trouble trying to get any Ryzen CPU above 4 GHz, even just to get it to 4.1. And then I got this one and it went to 4.3. I was quite blown away. I tried for 4.4. It actually got into Windows at 4.4, but as soon as you run Cinebench or anything, it's just not happening. So yeah, that was really impressive there. But for the sake of this showdown, I also ran the 1900X at 4 GHz so we could see them at the same clock speed and see the difference in performance there. I thought that would be interesting as well, so I've included those results. Temperatures wise, this was after running IDA 64 for 5 minutes in the CPU stress test. You can see it's pretty much where you would think it would be. The 1700 on the stock cooler is going to run hot once it's overclocked, but given that the 1900X had a much beefier cooler cooling it, a 280mm radiator, it still got pretty hot, especially when we up the voltages and stuff to get it up to 4.3 gigahertz. So with all that being said, let's move into the benchmarks now. nice standard mix of different synthetics and games in that. I have added Rainbow Six Siege, as I thought that's quite a good game to add in. A lot of people play that game, and I thought you guys would quite enjoy it. So let's jump in and see how these two CPUs perform. We're back. So as you guys can see, a 1900X at 4.3 gigahertz does not muck around. That was putting up some pretty incredible numbers. I just can't believe it went that high. It's really amazing. So yeah, very, very good there. The 1700 did very well, especially once it's overclocked. The stock speeds there, it did suffer a little bit compared to the 1900X, which have very high stock speeds. But once you overclock the 1700, it does very solid there and actually came out on top in quite a few of them. The majority, I believe, actually. So that's very good there. I think this is also to do with the platforms. Like X370s have had quite a bit of time to mature now, where, you know, X399, there's a lot of problems with it. It is getting a lot better, and this Gaming Pro Carbon I have, the MSI board, has probably been the best of the lot so far of the ones I've tested. But yeah, I think it still needs a bit more time to really mature, and there's also that difference in memory there that's going to hamper things a little bit. But overall, yeah, benchmarks wise, it was quite interesting seeing these two compared together, and of course those big numbers the 1900X puts out at 4.3 gigahertz, which leads us nicely into the conclusion, and we have to bring price into the equation. So right now in New Zealand at Playtech, you can pick up the Ryzen 7 1700 for 475 New Zealand dollars. If you're wanting to buy the Threadripper 1900X, it's going to set you back 899 New Zealand dollars, so it's almost double the price. Not only that, but you're going to have to pay for an X399 motherboard, which is much more expensive than, say, an X370 or a B350 motherboard, which you could use with the 1700. And you will also need to get a good cooler with your Threadripper CPU, whereas the 1700, you can get away just fine with the stock cooler, but if you're not comfortable with the temps going that high, because it will run hot once you overclock on the stock cooler, you can get a basic air cooler for it for quite a bit cheaper, and that will do just fine with it. So overall, all things considered, it's going to be much, much cheaper. It'll be, probably less than half as much money to go for the 1700 all up than it would for the 1900X. So is it worth it then? I'll put it this way. The 1900X is good because it gets you on the X399 platform. That means that you can later upgrade to say a 1920X or a 1950X if you really need to. It also has the access to that memory. You can use non-uniform memory if you want, and other things like that. There are benefits there to having quad channel. But at the same time, in like a pure value for money type thing, the 1700 just has to win. There's no two ways about it. It's cheaper, it's still got the 8 cores, and the performance is very similar. So yeah, this one I would have to call it for the Ryzen 7 1700. Now I thank you all for watching this video. Please subscribe to Tech Showdown if you haven't already, and like the video. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.